Episode, Clark goes crazy, Martha gets a job, and Lana has a creepy emo stalker. This is the Smallville Chronicles.
Somebody save me.
Hello, I'm Lou Gonzalez, joined as always by my co-host, Alan Muir.
Hello.
And this week we are checking out episodes 4 and 5 of season 2. One of these is good, and one of these is basically skippable.
Yeah, there's really no implication to the main
No, it's a
story.
total episode. The only thing that happens of interest is the Martha setup, and I think that's it. I don't know if any of the other stuff with the looters comes back into play.
No, honestly, this episode just made me sad because it has the guy from Night Court.
Oh, who does he play?
He plays Byron's father.
Oh, I did not catch that.
Yeah.
Well, we can get to that episode after I get through the good one, which is Red. So this is the 4th episode, but really the 3rd episode of the season. So we see it starts off kind of goofy where Clark and Peter are talking, and basically Clark says that his dad doesn't want him to spend his money on his class ring because it was like $500 or something.
No, it was $350, and Jonathan said it's your decision, which Pete points out as that's your dad that's your dad saying no. And Clark ends up saying no to that and buys a class ring.
Yep. Where we enter Chloe, who says like, "Oh, but these aren't even real rubies." And when Clark puts it on his finger, basically the same effect we see with the green meteor rock, except that he gets the red veins and then his eyes glow red. And so this is the introduction to other types of kryptonite, even though they're not calling it that yet. And I think we've talked about before, we see like 7 different versions of the show. Which, besides the red, I think they created all the other ones, right? I don't think the silver, gold, or blue exist in other continuities before, but I'm not 100% sure. Definitely not the silver and the gold one.
That is actually a really good question.
Yeah, because they basically use it as like a thing every couple of seasons. Because silver doesn't happen until like 7, and gold is like season
10.
Yeah, and then blue, I don't even remember what the blue does. Does it make him powerless, like in its presence?
Blue was introduced in, I think, season 7 or 8. It was when Bizarro made his debut.
Okay, and blue makes him...
Green makes him stronger, blue makes him weaker.
Yeah, and blue makes Clark stronger, or does it make him powerless? I can't remember its presence.
It may be the steroids of kryptonite.
Okay, and I know the gold makes him, like, if he gets hit with the gold, it permanently loses his powers, right?
Gold?
Because that's where they have Green Arrow's going to shoot him with a gold arrow.
Yes, and I remember there was another episode where...
Other Earth planet, Jonathan had kryptonite. In one episode with the Ultraman.
Yeah,
but we are totally diverging. So basically, Clark gets all like hopped up on this red stuff. If you've never known anything about what red kryptonite does, because it's on the green, so the green affects his body, makes him weak. The red kind of releases his inhibitions, I would say is the best way to describe it.
Yeah,
it's kind of similar to like if you see. Like when Spider-Man has the symbiote suit and stuff like that, like he just is so all the checks that you would have in your head to keep you from doing stuff. So this is where we enter our new character for the episode, Jessie Brooks. So Lana is showing her around. She is in a crop top sheer shirt with just her bra underneath and then like some hugger pants. And as Lana's showing her around, she's bored, except when she's Clark and she's like the hottie. At which point the principal shows up and tells her that there's a dress code there, and then Clark goes up and like mouths off to the principal being like, yeah, but she looks hot.
Okay, so I brought up the Wikipedia page for kryptonite. There's actually 22 different types of kryptonite. Yeah, they've and they're actually from the most of them have debuted in the comics.
Really?
Yeah, so there's green kryptonite, red kryptonite, anti-kryptonite, X kryptonite, blue kryptonite, white kryptonite.
Wow, I did not know there was all of those.
Yeah, and gold is able to depower a Kryptonian.
Yeah, that's what it does in the show.
white kryptonite kills all planet life from any world.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read a story with white kryptonite. Because the silver kryptonite is like just a piece of Brainiac in the show.
I believe so.
Yeah. And that's far off. But yeah,
And
that's ridiculous.
there's black kryptonite, which can split a Kryptonian into two separate entities.
That I remember because they used that in the Goofy Red and Blue Superman, right? I feel like they used black kryptonite in the show too at some point. But I don't remember.
Black kryptonite was used in Superman 3 starring Richard Pryor.
Oh, okay, that's where we get drunk Superman.
Evil Superman.
Yeah, where he's like drinking at the thing.
Yeah, it was also used on Supergirl.
The movie or the show, I'm assuming.
Yeah, season 1.
I watched season 1 and I don't remember that happening. So I'm just going to get back to the show while you are looking up more kryptonites. So next we cut to Metropolis, where we see some guy, Ted, in an ice bath being talked to about his girlfriend.
Okay, was this Bruce Boxleitner? Or just someone who looked like him?
The kid or the U.S. Marshal?
The Marshal.
I can look it up right now. So he was Ted Palmer, and he is played by Michael Tomlinson.
There's just something about old white guys that they all look the same.
He definitely looked familiar, but like, yeah, he's probably just like a character actor. So he's questioning Kyle, who's in an ice bath. He says he's a U.S. Marshal. He's looking for the fugitives. Then he pulls a gun on the kid, who tells him like to look up his phone records, and then he throws a radio in it, electrocuting the kid to death. It's a little hardcore. Also, this guy is like really quick to pull a gun.
Yeah, which makes his appearances throughout the entire episode just sometimes at certain points hilarious.
Oh yeah,
especially after Clark deals with him.
Yes, yeah. So then we cut to after school's over. Clark is talking to Pete about going to some bar, and Pete's like, "Yeah, I'll go with you," like because he's been wanting to do stuff. Clark also invites Jesse. When Lana arrives, he flirts with her and tells her that he's had his eye on her all day. She reminds him that they have a group study session later that night, and Lana's kind of taken aback by his behavior. So this is like the big thing we see in this episode is when Clark puts on the ring, he like super flirty with like every female character. And this kind of furthers a lot of the tension that we'll see this season between him and Lana, is all the stuff that happens in episodes specifically.
If I'm not mistaken, this episode also causes a rift between a temporary rift between Clark and Lana based on the next episode.
Yeah, like the next episode directly kind of ties into like
the fallout.
Yeah. So from here, Martha and Jonathan are talking to Barn about like, and they see Clark's wearing the class ring, and they ask him about it, and then he kind of storms off, and then Martha basically lectures Jonathan on the fact that he bought like a motorcycle when he was a kid, and maybe they're not so normal teenagers going through some rebellion. Then we cut to the Luthor mansion, where we see the kind of juxtaposition of Lex and Lionel. So Lionel's moving in and taking over the office and having like all these special things put in because of his blindness. Lex is annoyed, but then he kind of like deals with it and says to give whatever his father wants. I'm gonna like rush through a bunch of stuff. Our U.S. Marshal guy shows up at the bar that they were talking about earlier and basically finds the info that Jesse came there. And
does he pull a gun on the bartender too?
No, he tells him that like there's like she's underage and you let her drink there. That's what he kind of pulls on him.
Okay.
And we cut back to the Talon. Clark shows up late. We have Pete, Lon, and Chloe there, and tells them that they should blow off the studying and go have some fun. And then Clark tells Pete that informs Pete that he's shocked that Clark reveals that he's been using his X-ray vision to check out people.
Yeah, he uses it to check out Chloe and Lana.
Mm-hmm. But then Clark kind of wanders off because he's bored.
Yeah.
The next day, the Kents go into the barn, and it is filled with the most ridiculous trash that money can buy. And basically, Clark went out and just like bought everything, like I guess on a credit card. Something implied how he bought stuff. Everything
he used. He bought satellite. He got satellite TV, an Xbox, motorcycle,
Yeah,
big TV.
sound system.
Yeah, and he says he's tired of being poor, or he's sick of being poor his entire life. Where earlier, when he talks about the glass ring, he says, I'm tired of penning and diming through life."
Mm-hmm. But he like jumps out the window and rides off on his motorcycle.
No, he doesn't jump off. He runs off. Because if you notice, you hear they use the same sound.
Oh, like the sound.
The same sound effect.
Okay. And then as he's driving, he sees Jessie arguing with her dad about the dress code, and then she jumps on his motorcycle, I believe, and they drive off. Is that here? Chloe, Lana, and Peter again like use that new Clark. Jonathan goes to the school to address him, and then Clark basically throws him into the truck, telling him that he's not his real father, and shoving. And then Pete helps Jonathan, and then the Kents think that it's like a new development in his abilities.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. There's a lot in this episode.
I was gonna save this for the episode where. Actually, no, I'll save it for the episode with Christopher Reeve.
Okay. The next thing that we see is Clark flirting with Lana. He asks her out, although she's embarrassed by the Clark's public display. She agrees to go out with him. At the torch, Chloe discovers that the ring is actually red meteor rock found at Hobbs Pond. Pete tells the Kents, and they try to figure out a plan. They figure out that that's what's causing his erratic behavior. Cut to Lex. Clark goes to Lex.
He talks about it, how he's taking Lex's advice, finally making his move.
Yep, he has to borrow the Ferrari. Lana's less than thrilled with everything that's going on, and they go to the bar. And then Clark basically loves everything. He wants to dance, but wants to leave. Jesse arrives and kind of steals Clark away, and they ditch Lana. But the barkeeper recognizes Jesse and retrieves the phone that the marshal gave him. Lana leaves, and Clark gets into a fight, basically putting in the bar. And then Jesse basically tells him like they gotta get out of there before the cops come.
Yeah, he then goes. Doesn't he go? If I'm not mistaken, he goes back to the Luther mansion.
He goes back home and packs his bags, and then he goes to Luther, and basically tells his dad that he's sick of being used as like a farm equipment.
Yeah.
And they try to convince him it's the ring, but he refuses to take it off.
No.
And then
he plays them by acting like he's having a moment of clarity, where he says, "Wait, so you mean this whole time I've been acting weird? I've been acting odd because of this?" And it just pretty much spits it in their face.
And then he goes back to Lex, and Lex basically tricks him into hanging out because he says that he wants to go with him and Jesse to Metropolis, but really he's stalling him. We see Chloe and Lana talking about the date. Lana admits that she's really attracted to the new Clark, but she'd hope that he would tell her things that the other Clark wouldn't, like, how he was before. Then we see the marshal kind of figure out that it's Lex's Ferrari. And this basically ends with the confrontation at the Luther mansion, where Lionel's in the room with the marshal and Clark.
And he pulls the gun. Clark's like, "You really think that's going to scare me?" He speeds to the gun, grabs it, takes it, points it at his palm, fires 3 shots. I imagine Lionel is just shitting himself.
Yeah, because he's blind in the room, and he's just like, "Wait, what's going on? Oh my god, why is there gunfire? Hello, somebody talk to me." And then
he just says, "Oh, it's nothing." He missed, and he just lets the bullets fall to the floor, which will pay off later.
And then when Palmer tries to leave, he pins him to the wall with the pool table and basically gets the information out of him that he was paid by.
And he was being paid, or Jesse and her father are in witness protection, or going in witness protection, because Jesse's dad is a whistleblower, and the employer wants him dead, and the evidence that would put him in jail retrieved.
Mm-hmm.
And once Clark finds out from the marshal, he just flicks him in the head, and it knocks him out.
Yep. And then Clark goes to Jesse's house to pick her up, but tells her that he needs the discs. But she's like, no, my dad needs them for his protection. And this is when the marshal shows back up, awakened from being flicked in the head. And
doesn't Clark beat him up some more?
yes, Clark beats him up some more, scaring the shit out of Jesse.
And then
And
Jesse's dad
shoots the marshal.
killing him.
Yes. And then threatens to shoot Clark.
He says the words, "Son, I don't want to shoot you, or I don't want to hurt you." And Clark goes on about how he's sounding a lot like Jonathan, or he says, my dad said the same thing to me, or acts the same way to me.
And while that's going on, he pulls the gun out of his hand, and then Jesse runs out the back into the cornfield. And Clark sees, I guess, that the discs are in her bag. So he catches up to her, but then Pete shows up right when he gets the disc. And basically is like, oh, what's she going to do? Get a mile or two away? That's nothing to me. And then this is when Jonathan shows up.
With
and
the sledgehammer.
Yes. It's like, I don't want to hurt you, son. And he just like kind of laughs at it. And then he says like, now, Pete. And Pete opens up the jewelry box, I believe.
Yeah, with the green kryptonite
inside, which weakens Clark. Then Jonathan swings in super slow-mo. Clark goes to block it, and it hits the ring itself, shattering it and releasing Clark.
Well, no, it not only does it doesn't just weaken Clark, it sobers him up.
Yeah, it's like he's coming out of a drug stupor.
Because Jonathan says to Clark, "Now," and he intentionally puts the ring in the direction of the sledgehammer.
Okay, see, I didn't think it was that, but that makes sense. I thought he was just going to block it. I didn't think the actual green meteor was actually like counteracting the red.
Yeah, the green just restores it, negates everything.
Mm-hmm. So we got two other parts of this. Basically, back at the mansion, Lex tells his father that he needs to stop feeling sorry for himself, and Lionel
he uses an example after right after the meteor shower when he was bald. Lionel told a young Lex to stop feeling sorry for himself, and Lex does a similar thing to Lionel now that he's blind.
Yeah. And then the very end, we get the whole Clark's trying to apologize to Lana while she's on horseback. And she basically is like, either you got to tell me what was up or you can't. And Clark's like, well, I can't really. And then she just is like, I'm out, and like kind of rides away. And since he won't explain, she can't forgive him.
Yeah, she shows up with a thing of flowers, and she says, "Do you really think some flowers will make me forget about the way he treated me?" And Clark says, "I'm sorry, Lana, but the way I was acting, that wasn't me." And she says, "You said you had feelings for me, so you're saying that wasn't you?" And he's caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and he has the exact same conversation with his parents too, where they're like, well, those feelings didn't come from nowhere. His inhibitions were kind of removed.
Yeah, so, he also says that he explains the rush he felt when he put the ring on. He said it made him feel like he wanted to tell everyone his secret.
Oh, yeah, because he said that after when he bought everything. They're like, what could anybody... But he basically says, like, what everybody would think is, what can anybody do if he just says it? Like, do whatever the hell he wants. It's not like anybody can stop him.
Then he would become Injustice Superman.
He'd be more like Ultraman. Like, that version of, like, Red Kryptonite Clark would probably take over the...
Yeah.
And have, like, a harem. All right. But this was actually the better of the two episodes. It is a good episode in the fact that you can kind of see what the Red Kryptonite does, and then it leads like to a bunch of subplots that go out through the season. So the Lionel Lex stuff, Lionel finding the bullets, we were
definitely spoiled by last week's episodes.
Yes. Clark and Lana's relationship, but it's not a terrible episode. It's not a filler episode because we also get to obviously learn a bunch more lore that there is more than just the green meteor rock. So we have that. And then, so we can move on to the second episode, which is Nocturne, or Nocturne. I don't know how you would say it.
I believe Nocturne.
Nocturne. So in my head, this takes place like directly after just because Lana's still on her dumb horse. Except now she is riding through the spooky graveyard of her parents. So it's the return of the Landgrave. So she's riding and she finds a love letter, and then she thinks somebody's there, and then we see a kid running, and then a guy and a dog show up and shoots him, and then he wakes up in his bed, and the guy's like, "Oh, like this is like, how did you get out?" And he tells him, "I pried open the lock," and he yells at him and tells him the rules, and then from here we cut to the school. Lana showing off the love letter to Chloe and Pete to think it's cute, but Clark is kind of like
He's jealous.
He's jealous of it, and she's still mad at him from the last episode. This episode is really, I don't even know how to much to say it.
It's actually it's hard to believe, but the most recent episode of Flash, that was better than this episode, and that episode was bad.
Oh, the second episode of season 2, whatever season we're on.
Season 5.
Oh, I didn't mind it. We get to talk about that on Fandom Zone. I'm not minding this season so far, but I get why you wouldn't like it.
I just don't like Chris Klein.
Well, he barely talks in it.
Yeah, thank God his stupid face is covered up.
But for this episode, basically, is Lana has a secret admirer. Everybody thinks it's cute except for Clark. And then in the backstory of all this, Lionel needs an assistant. He fires one. Lex is like, oh, they've only come from Harvard and Yale. And he's basically randomly sitting outside when Martha shows up because she's getting the check, which isn't there for like a grocery. And basically, Lionel is enamored with her and hires her as his assistant.
This leads to a scene 2 seasons from now where Lionel is in Clark's body and Clark is in Lionel's body in jail, and Lionel in Clark's body tries flirting with Martha.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Season 4 is pretty forgettable because it's got Jason Teague.
Oh, okay, I remember. That's the one. That's the what's his name from
Jensen Ackles.
Yeah. That's where Lana has the creepy relationship.
Yeah, and that's also the introduction of Lois.
And that's the Kawachi season, right?
No, that's the aftermath of that.
Okay, because I know, like, right somewhere in that time, because the Jensen Ackles character has to do with like when Clark's gone full Kryptonian or something. I don't remember. We'll get there.
Just since I might as well just say it now, Jensen Ackles' character, he gets crushed by a meteor.
He's such a like useless character. I hated that character so much.
It
But,
was either him or Adam Knight, and Adam Knight had zero chemistry with Tim Crook. So
yeah. Well, and then once Lois showed up, like they kind of the two of them up more and more until she was like not even on the show.
yeah.
But
back to this episode, to which I noticed at a certain point, wait a minute, most notably the scene where Byron is in full monster mode and is talking to Lana. This is just Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, absolutely ridiculous. So we can rip through this pretty quick. So basically, what they find out is that at some point, I don't even remember the character's name.
Byron
Goes and visits Lana again because she fell asleep on her parents' grave. That's not totally
because she was
weird.
waiting to find out who the secret admirer is.
Clark shows up, hits him, so he gets hurt. So they bring him to the hospital.
They
bring him to
the Talon.
The Talon, that's right. And then he runs home. Lana and Clark get threatened by the dad. Lana and Clark go to Jonathan, and basically they come over with the sheriff, and they're like, "Son, like he's not here. He died. This is messed up." And Jonathan basically is like, "Would you rather, not do anything and there's something wrong?" So the sheriff says that he's going to get a warrant. Clark decides that he doesn't want to wait for it. So he goes with Pete and breaks in. We see the dog bite Clark and it does nothing and whimpers it.
Yeah, because Clark's skin is pretty impenetrable.
Yeah, its teeth would have shattered.
I'm glad that didn't happen because
that would be messed up. But like, wouldn't that happen?
Well,
I don't know. It would have messed up its teeth.
All I know is that I would have preferred it I would have wanted to see, what was that scene from Thor Ragnarok where it's Hulk versus
Fenrir.
Yeah, I keep wanting to call the dog Sif.
No, Sif is the female god who's like not in the movie.
No, I'm talking about the giant dog enemy or the giant
Yeah,
dog boss in
yeah,
Demon
it's one of the.
Souls or Dark Souls.
Oh, okay, okay, because yeah, Fenrir is like a Norse god. I think he's like Loki's son or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, but I thought that was actually a good effect because there's obviously something underneath his arm that was protecting him, but like that dog definitely bit whoever's arm that was. But they go inside and Clark just breaks the chain that's holding Byron and like carries him outside forcibly. And
then he gets on all fours and you see scars.
Yeah, they had shown the scars before, but yeah, the scars start to like open up.
And he backhands Pete into.
No, first he backhands Clark. He punches Clark and throws him like 100 yards into shed, and then he like kind of tosses like through the windshield of a car, which Pete should be dead.
Yeah, at that speed and at that speed and strength of being hit, or the power of being hit that hard, he'd be goo.
Yeah, and all he gets is so this is where I was remembering the hospital. So Jonathan and Martha go to the hospital because Pete has a fracture in his arm,
Hairline fracture.
Yeah, it makes a joke a bit.
Yeah, how everything but his hairline hurts.
Mm-hmm. And then Chloe finds out like the death certificate, and it has to do with Metron Pharmaceuticals,
a former subsidiary of Luther Corp.
Mm-hmm. And the next thing I believe is when Clark warns Lana not to go near him, and then she kind of brushes him off and says like, "Oh, you're not telling me stuff because you don't trust me." And he's like, "No, it's because I won't protect you." And then we have her go to the graveyard. Byron is there, and he kind of attacks her and says like he has like no impulse control again, just like kind of Clark did, and ends up like pushing her, and she smacks her head into a gravestone, which probably would have also killed her.
And I'm just saying the weird thing about this episode, when Clark hurts Byron, he knocks him backwards. He hits his head on a grave and has some blood and starts bleeding from the back of his head. No one else has this problem throughout the rest of the episode.
Yeah, and they also don't bring him to a hospital. They just kind of give him some cappuccino and.
Yeah, because that really, really heals you.
Yep. So Byron runs off. We cut to Clark and Lex talking at the mansion. That Lex is going to look into it. They look and see that Lionel and Martha are going to be getting on a helicopter to Metropolis. So we cut inside there, and they're talking. And then as the helicopter's trying to take off, it gets pulled down.
And they're not showing you what's actually going on.
Yeah, for like about 10, 15 seconds. You just see like the helicopter shaking until Martha looks out the window and sees Byron.
And
he opens the door, pulls Martha out, and like tosses her kind of
very gingerly.
Yeah, very gingerly. Then pulls Lionel out and says, like, "You did this to me." And Lionel's like, "I don't even know what's going on. Who are you?" And then throws him, not so gingerly. And then as he's attacking Lionel, Clark shows up. They start fighting. He again punches Clark far away.
Clark then notices that there's a sealed off or closed off well.
And tackles him in there. And then once they're inside, he like holds him in the dark until he returns to normal. And then Byron has no memory.
Clark?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Not to mention this whole time he's been running around, he's in a trench coat with no shirt on.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
CW version.
And before that, which they did do with Kristen Kirk, I believe.
Yeah.
So this was like a pilot.
This is a backdoor pilot for a show that would debut like 10 years later.
So Byron's in the hospital, and they're going to be looking into cure. And it basically ends with Clark and Lana visiting Byron, and she's like, "Oh, I should listen to a friend." And then Martha, Lionel, and Lex, and Martha convinced Lionel to put money into research into the cure. Basically said it'd be cheaper than spending advertising to restore consumer confidence, and Lex kind of smirks. And that is this episode.
Yeah, and just a quick thing I want to get to. Byron was the only one who survived out of the trial that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else died. And there's actually a good scene with Byron's mother and the Kents, where they're just where she's just when he was having the problems, they locked him in the cellar. They were terrified. She said, "We were terrified. We don't know if that makes us. We're scared if we don't know if that makes us bad parents." I kind of like that because you don't get to see interactions between other parents on the show.
No, we don't. That part was very interesting to kind of show like, oh, this is what the Kents could have done.
Yes, it's a Marvel What If and Clark, and it's actually what does happen in the Superman Flashpoint tie-in, except where he lands in Metropolis and the government gets control of Superman, and he's very emaciated.
Yep. There are a couple of trivia things I saw on this. So Richard Moyle also was the voice for Two-Face and Harvey Dent in the Batman the Animated Series.
Wow.
So he joins Rosenbaum and Glover as well, who did voices DC Animated Universe. And then this was, we had the Man of Steel joke. And then they sort of based Byron off of a DC Comics villain called Rampage, who I've never heard of.
Neither have I.
There's some doctor who, like, when she would go out into the light, she would get stronger but lose her inhibitions. So it's kind of like a reverse vampire. I don't know. Yeah, this is like and really bad, and it's just super filler. That's all it is. That's what happens when you have like a 20-something episode season. But I don't know. Did you have any? I guess on either episode, did you have MVP or LVP, favorite scenes, worst scenes?
In Red, my MVP was Walling, because I really like the way he is when he's portraying Clark affected by different kryptonite.
Yeah, he's definitely. It's a very Clark heavy episode, but he is great. Kind of like Rosenbaum when he gets to do other things besides just be the same version of himself. So I would have to agree with you in that episode. And the second one, I have no one.
My MVP for the second episode is actually actually, there's really no one.
Yeah, at best it would be like Glover, but he's really not in the episode. That like him or Martha, I guess would be.
There are three main players. So that's Byron, Clark, and Lana, and they barely use Rosenbaum in this episode.
Yeah, the only other two kind of people that are involved are Martha and Lionel are side story, which they're good, but they only have like 3 scenes.
Something we didn't talk about, but I really liked was the semi storyline with Martha and Jonathan.
Oh, about like her actually working for him.
Yeah, because she says she's thought about going back to work, and she wanted to use her degree, and Jonathan thinks that she's tired of farm life.
Yeah, well, it ties into her whole backstory of being kind of like she's from a wealthier family from Metropolis.
Yeah.
But LVP wise, the first episode I would have to give it to the Marshal, and the second is
Byron.
I was actually gonna say the costume designer because his outfits are so bad. Like he has like a neckerchief like when he's normal. Like they just made him like a goth vamp boy in the beginning, and I was just like, this is just terrible. And then they like made him look super pale. Like it was just the second episode's like such throwaway trash. I don't even know like that. Like we're seeing second episode entire thing. Take out those 3 scenes with Martha and Lionel, and the entire rest of the episode is kind of pointless.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't have much else here. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about for these episodes?
Well, it can't get worse than this for when it comes to Nocturne.
Yeah, so the next episode is Redux. So that is, we see Martha's father, and I believe our meta is a woman who's able to drain like life essence, so very like vampire, but through kisses. And then Lana finds out that her biological father might still be alive.
Yes, I remember that was one of the big plot points during the season.
And the one after that is Lineage, which is the woman who says that she is claiming to be Clark's mother. Which
oh
is an
god,
awesome
that episode terrible.
Oh well, the flashback parts are what's because
Yeah,
that reveals what the connection between the Kents and the Luthers.
yeah, and the charity that Clark was the only one, or was the only adoption.
Yeah, so like the episode itself may not be good, but the actual parts inside of it are like huge to the story going forward. So that's what we look forward to checking out next week.
I've got
Plugs?
a bunch of the plugs. By the time this episode will be out, or as we record this, Los Horror Games 2 days away from launch, and at midnight Saturday at 12 a.m. episode 0 of Los Horror Games podcast drops, and it's basically Emmett Watkins Jr., Hunter Davenport, and myself giving and pretty much talking about what you can expect from the podcast, and also what our motivations. It's a mix of what you can expect from the podcast and what you can expect from Los Horror Games. And I may just fire half the team because they still haven't done what I've been asking them, or what I've been asking them to do for about 3 months now. But I kid. On the 20th, though, there will be the first edition of Personal Stories, first edition of Fantasy Developer. So look for that.
All right. Was there anything else?
Oh, yes. John Seiler, myself, and Connor Irving, also a member of Los Horror Games. We recorded a pilot for a comics show that right now we don't know the status of whether or not it'll be a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing.
Yeah, it's just
us talking comics.
Yep, just BSing about comics for like about an hour. And then for me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Lou A. Gonzalez. Don't forget to check out the other Phantom Zone podcasts. We just wrapped up, as well as Netflix did, Iron Fist Season 2. Daredevil drops the weekend, so as well as all the new seasons of new stuff just started, except for Legends Supergirl, I don't think started yet. And
Supergirl, Arrow, and Flash have started.
Okay, I've only watched.
And if I'm not mistaken, the plan is to review Black Lightning as once the entire season's done.
Okay, and
so Legends is the only show that hasn't debuted yet.
Yep, so we'll be talking about all those shows at some point. And I think that's just about it. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Los Horror. And that's just about it. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.
He's been Lou Gonzalez. I'm Alan Muir, and this podcast stands for truth, justice, and the American way.